welcome everyone to Automation Extravaganza. I have Stephen is my wingman with this, and he's going to be monitoring the chat in case there's any questions or comments, and we'll have some Q&A at the end, and we can take care of those for you. So feel free to put any questions, comments, thoughts into the chat session. So we will get this started here. And first of all, a little bit about me. So my name again is Ed Gaile. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, which is under a hurricane watch right now. I've been married for 26 years, and I have a 15-year-old daughter. So if any of you have the user manual on teenage girls, I'm going to need that because the side eyes and the eye rolls are intense, and I'm trying to figure out how to decipher those. I've been using Atlassian products for, over the past decade, 12 plus years, and I've been the Atlassian Community leader for the past almost 9 years. So that has been a fun opportunity. I just recently made a job switch. So I've gone from the customer side of the Atlassian ecosphere to the actual provider side. So I am now with the Atlassian partner Appfire. And a couple fun facts about me. So I am a professional pitmaster. So I started off doing competitions, and that has kind of evolved into making my own sauces and bottling them and everything. So that's kind of like my zen. Some people like to run marathons. I like to smoke meat. And I am a huge fan of 80s rock hair bands. The 80s perhaps is the greatest decade of music. I'll die on that hill. You can debate me, that's fine. But how big of a fan? Let's see. Oh, yes. Okay, now that you've had a chance to wake up and see what I look like with hair, we'll get into the actual program. So, and I did go see the stadium tour as it came through Atlanta, by the way. So what are we talking about? We're talking about automation in Jira. There's 10, 20 different ways you can do automation within Jira. There's so many different ways. So, but what we're going to talk about today is we're going to look at some of the native automations within Jira. We'll look at extending automations through third-party app. We'll look at some automation examples, and we'll have opportunity to look at some thoughts and then have some questions about that. And the kind of the whole overarching concept I want you guys to think about is we need to think about automation. How are we going to plan it out? Just don't start throwing things in there to automate just for automation purpose kind of thing. So let's see here. So the first thing we're going to look at is the native automation for Jira application that is standard in cloud and data center now. They've got the automation in data center as well. Some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not. And I'm going to apologize because I'm not very good at talking to slides. So I'm going to jump between the slides and actually showing you some of this information because I like to get my hands dirty and actually show you what's going on here. So the automation for Jira application. So what is that? That is the native. So it was a company called CodeBarrel, and they developed it as an app. And then Atlassian acquired CodeBarrel, and they have folded it into the actual applications now. So we have the automation for Jira, and it consists of what they call no code. I say kind of low code because you can get into using smart fields and smart values, and that kind of has a little bit of a syntax to it. But what does a rule consist of? It consists of a trigger, what's going to make what's going to kick off the rule. You have conditions, you have actions, what are we going to do? And then you have branching that you can utilize. So So there's two levels of rules you can have within the application. You can have global rules, or you can have context or specific scope focused rules. So global rules, as it implies, applies to all projects. So it's gonna cover if you have 50 projects with 25,000 issues, it's going to cover all those projects. So the one thing that I recommend is to kind of be judicious when using global rules. There are certain use cases for using them. And there are specific global triggers that are available and that are not available to project specific level rules. And for example, one of those is a project created. So let me go and show that to you real quick. Let me move this around. I need to move this over here, this over here. So if I go to a cloud and a data center version instance up here, so I'll probably pop between both of them here. But for automation, for Jira, if I use my handy dandy little period and then search for automation rules. And right now you can see I'm at the global level, global automation. If I create a rule, I can see that there is, sorry, there we go, a project created action. So this is not available on a project or a multi-project or a software project contextual rule. And so usually people use this if there's like a governance organization that needs to be notified whenever projects are created. They want to be able to, okay, verify that yes, the project is not a duplicate. We're using it for the right purposes, kind of more of a management of a governance situation. So that is a global rule. And again, it applies to all Jira projects. So what else do we have? We have contextual rules. So you can actually make the rule specific to a single project, multiple projects, or a software type or a project type. And when I say project type, that means either a business, a software, or a service management specific project. I personally have not used that specific contextual rule. I know there are use cases for that. But I primarily utilize the single project or the multiple project rules, and that allows you to drill down and specifically filter your rules down to the project level, which again increases the performance of your rules. And the only issue that I usually find myself in is if I try to test a rule and I forget to add that project. Because I can't figure out why it's not working. And then all of a sudden I remember that I didn't add that project to the scope. So again, contextual rules are your friend. It helps you filter down what you're applying the rule to. So within, we have our trigger. Our trigger is what's going to invoke our rule. There's a lot of different triggers. We could spend here 3 hours talking about all the different various triggers and how to use them. The one thing that I like to make sure is that, if possible, we make our trigger as specific as possible. So in this example, do I want to invoke a rule if an issue has been updated, or do I know the specific field value that I'm looking for? So one is going to span a lot of fields, and then one obviously is going to span a single field. So the more we can filter down and specify within our rules, the better they're going to perform. So that is one trigger update. What else do we have in automation for Jira? We have conditions. So your conditions are, you're going to trigger your rule, then you're going to apply, what do I want to apply my rule to? So what are my conditions? And again, there are so many different conditions that we can utilize, but one of the tips, or I guess the things that I like to focus on, is drilling it down the condition, filter down the issues that are applicable to the rule as much as possible, as early as possible. So if we have a condition where we have a project, in this example, that has 1,000 issues over 5 different issue types, if we can narrow it down to a specific issue type, because that's what we want the rule to apply to, that'll eliminate a ton of other issues for our rule to apply against. So in this example, if I had, say, if I wanted a status in progress first, before I got down to the issue type, we're going to process against a ton of rules that we don't need. So again, that comes to the thought of planning out our automations. How are we going to structure them? Can we get to the least amount of issues that we're going to apply the rule against as fast as possible? And then another recommendation is if you have to do some JQL intensive conditions, it's better to do those towards the end of the rule structure, just because JQL takes a lot of processing within automation of for Jira, and that can, if you have a heavy duty one, that can just take a while to churn. So again, if we can narrow it down to as little issues as possible, and then apply the JQL conditions, that will increase in performance. So we also have branching. So branching is kind of a cool concept within automation. So when we're applying automation to rules, very rarely, well, maybe not very rarely, but a lot of times we're not just dealing with a single issue. We have issues that have subtasks. We have issues that are linked, issues that are parent-child relationship. We have to drill down and do some automation as far as, one of the best use cases is, closing out a parent or a task if all the subtasks are in a resolved state. So branching is a very cool concept that we can use within automation, but the problem is we need to utilize it kind of judiciously, because branching will spin up, it's multi-threaded, so it'll spin up another process when trying to use. So again, thinking through our automations and planning them out, making sure that the branching is absolutely needed, and it won't impact our performance too much. The other thing with branching is that order is not guaranteed. So, for whatever use case reason, if we have a task with subtasks, 1, 2, 3, 4, and for whatever reason we wanted to process the subtasks in that order, 1, 2, 3, 4, the branching doesn't guarantee that, because it's multi-threaded again, and it could process 3, 2, 1, 4 kind of thing. So, and then you cannot have a branch within a branch. I've tried; it doesn't work. So, so let me jump back over to the rules, automation rules, before I get into the resources that are available, just so we can kind of look around again. So, again, this is a global rule. I'm going to go back to my single here. So this is a rule that we're going to be utilizing in an example today. So again, we have a trigger, we have a branch, we have a condition, and we have an action. If I go return to the list and we just look really quickly at some of the available options here, you can, there's so many options that you can utilize for a trigger. And if you look at these look awfully like listeners. So you'll see that a lot of the triggers are kind of listener-esque as far as the native listeners that Jira utilizes. Issue created, issue commented, issue deleted. So in the background, automation is listening for these guys to execute. But then you have other ones. Again, you can get into the DevOps, scheduled, JSM. So again, it's very intuitive as far as how you utilize it. So if I have a, we can do any sort of field changed, save, and then you can look at, what's our conditions. You can have different conditions as far as if else, advanced compare, and then you can use the smart fields here, JQL condition. Again, this one, if it's a heavy duty lifting one, it's kind of better to filter down until we get to that JQL condition. And then we have actions. So once we get to our actions, Again, we have a lot of options that we can utilize as far as editing issues, transitioning issues, creating subtasks, doing a lot of notifications. That's a very popular one. So again, these are just a lot of the basics about automation for Jira. And again, if we look at this guy in my Def Leppard project, I can see if I go to rule details that the scope is only Def Leppard. So again, that comes back to the concept of having a project or multi-project scope or contextual filtered rule. So it's only going to run against this project. So I don't even have to do a JQL to say project equal DL kind of thing. So I can just go into my rules and execute as I need to. So given that, and again, that's a high level overview of automation for Jira. Atlassian gives you a couple resources that you can utilize to kind of leverage existing or templates that they have already created. So they have a template directory with popular templates, and they also have a playground. So they have the templates and the playground. So if you're looking at using automation for Jira, this is a great place to go to look at examples and say, okay, well, I'm trying to do X with a rule. This looks like it's very similar. Pull that up, pull mine up, and then I can kind of go down and say, okay, well, this is what I need to do to build my rule kind of thing. So it's a really cool resource to have as far as utilizing the automation for Jira. So that is the first native automation that I am talking about. The second one's kind of cool. I'm a really fan of this, and maybe some of you haven't used this. If you don't have the Insight asset management piece of Jira, and again, it's only available in Jira Cloud Premium or Enterprise or in Data Center 4.15 and higher. So again, this was another application that Atlassian acquired and has bundled into their offerings now within Jira. So again, Insight is an asset management. It's really cool to use. In my former place of employment, we used it to scan our servers from our different data centers, whether they were in Atlanta or they were in Raleigh, and we would also scan laptops, our employee laptops over VPN. So all that information, all those assets, all that was pulled into Insight, and then the Insight objects are kind of like a Jira issue. It's kind of like a Jira issue type. So you can have all the information, the fields, the attributes, and it's really good for reporting. And so our IT team was able to see, which servers are running, which ones are decommissioned, which ones have specific operating systems, software, all that great information. So if you're into an ITSM kind of environment, this is a great application to have. Also for like onboarding employees. So, new resource that comes to the company, you can assign them and a laptop through the asset management here in Insight, and then that employee is tied to that, so you can do reporting around that as well. So, but this also has its own automation. So it has its own if this, then that type of no code automation within Insight. So I like this. I wanted to mention this one because it's really kind of cool as far as what you can do with it. So again, I'm going to drop back out and go to the actual Insight. But real quick, this is what it looks like here as far as when you go to the Insight automation. Again, it has a when trigger, an if condition, a then, which is your action. So again, it has that same format of trigger it. What are we doing? Do it kind of thing. So, but let me go ahead and show you real quick. So here is Insight. I have my data center instance up here. And again, you can see I have my servers here that I put in here. And again, I have that information. And again, these objects can be anything. I have servers in here. These could be any kind of asset information that you want to have available within Insight here. and they're all contained in the concept as an object schema. So my object schema here is corporate, and my corporate servers. So if I go to configure that, I have the automation option here. And then I can see I have one set up already that says send notifications on new object creation. So again, this is kind of like a governance rule. So if we have an asset that is brought in, we can send notifications to IT department or whoever else needs to know, hey, we have a new asset. Do we need to do anything about it? Again, it could be used for governance. It could be used just for notifications. But if we look at the actual rule, we have a when, and so you can add, I think, up to 5 different events here. So again, concept of a trigger. Again, if you look at this, they're very similar to what listeners check out. And then you have the condition. In this case, I'm saying if the object type is host. Insight, just so you know, has its own query language called IQL, Insight Query Language, which is kind of JQLS, but specific to Insight. And you can utilize that within here. That's a whole nother presentation. But IQL is what it's called, very similar to JQL. So this one, my IQL is object type equals host. So I just want to know if a host has been created. I didn't do that. That guy. And my action is email. So if I look at the edit, I can say email notification. I'm going to send it to myself. And here's where you can pass in variables from that specific. So when it runs the automation rule, it's going to come through and bring in everything that fits this trigger, this criteria, and then says, okay, well, I need to send an email notification. If I have 5 new servers, it's going to send an email with the 5 different emails. We can consolidate into one if we needed to, but I can pass in variables like the issue key for notification purposes. And again, actions can be email notification, create. Again, this is on data center, so I can execute a Groovy script, which I'm a fan of doing that. So, but we can kind of see this in action real quick. If I go back to corporate, oops, sorry. I'm going to create a new object. I'm going to say this is going to be prod 01. The status is running. Now, again, I'm adding this manually. You can also set up scripts via, like, if you want to scan your network and your environment, like through Ansible or Insight has its own discovery scanning application that it can utilize. So you can bring these in automatically or manually add them, or you can use CSV files if you have information that is dumped out from one system and you want to pull it into your Insight instance. Sorry. Product 1, I'm going to say it's got 36. Say it's Linux. I'm just going to give it a IP address. So again, I'm just creating a new one. This is prod 01, and that is my Insight key, core 7. Now, if we give this enough time, theoretically, it should send me an email that we will check here in a second. There we go. So there we go. I just got the email there that says Insight new server core 7 has been created, and it has a link to it. So again, it's kind of a cool thing where you can utilize these notifications for any sort of governance, or anyone in your IT system needs to know that an artifact was created and is in Insight now. So again, kind of a cool thing. Again, so that was Insight. So some quick Insight automation tips for those that may have it and want to utilize it. You can add 5 events for a single rule. So when I say 5 events, I mean the 5 when. And instead of creating 2 or more rules with the same action, you can consolidate those. So say I have a email notification that goes to my IT department for something. I can do, when an object created, or plus I can add when an object deleted, plus I can add something else. They're all going to be sending a notification to a specific system area. So instead of creating 2, 3 individual rules, I can just create 1 rule that has 3 triggers and send it to the same notification. For conditions, again, if you have an if, you need a then, and you can have 3 if-then pairs. And then for actions, you can have up to 5 actions in your then box, in that box at the end. So your actions. So just kind of another cool kind of automation thing that's native to Jira and Cloud Premium Enterprise and Data Center 4.15 and above. But wait, there's more. So Insight also has workflow automation. So if you have some workflows that you utilize within a specific project, and then maybe these are like some of your ITSM workflows where you have assets that are decommissioned or whatever, you can add an Insight post function to your workflow, and it'll do any of those assigned actions like change a value, add an object. There's just a lot more automation possibilities outside of that automation builder within Insight. You can actually add them to your specific workflows as well. So again, that's kind of a cool from an ITSM perspective, being able to utilize that. All right, so those are 2 native ones. I'm going to give a little shout out to Jira listeners and Jira triggers and workflows, because those are also native automation pieces, but they don't get as much love as some of the other ones. But again, those are utilized. And again, the triggers are usually used within the workflows for your DevOps. So like if you have a Git or a Bitbucket that does a pull request, you can transition a workflow, go from pull request, and then you can actually interface with, like, say, Fisheye or Crucible when they're doing work product review on the pull request kind of thing. So again, a total another presentation that we can do on that. But now that we've looked at some native Jira automation applications, let's look at extending it. And again, probably 10, 15 different ways you can extend your automation. I'm going to go with my one of my personal favorites is JWME, Jira Miscellaneous Workflow Extensions. I started in being a Jira admin for Data Center, so I'm well into Groovy. So this is kind of one that I utilize almost every day for probably 7 years. But it's really effective. It has it for Data Center and Cloud. And again, as we can see here, I'm looking at the actual Cloud overview of in the app, JWME. You can find all the configuration for JWME, and we have, if you guys are familiar with the Atlassian ecosphere, we have the OG, Rachel Wright. She's a superstar who has utilized JWME, so I just like pointing her out and embarrassing her like that. So what I want to do now is I want to take you through 2 examples, make sure I have time, 2 workflow examples. Automation examples. So the first example, we're going to use 3 things. We're going to use JSU, JWME, and automation for Jira to perform an automation. I'm doing this because, again, overall, we want to make sure that we plan out our automations, and there's situations you can get into if you have multiple Jira administrators and they all have their favorite automation tool. One of them likes JSU, one of them likes JWME, one of them likes automation, one of them likes Scriptrunner, one of them likes whatever kind of thing. You can get into kind of a mess if everyone's just throwing automations into their favorite piece, and then something breaks or needs to be updated and you can't figure out where it is, especially if you get a new Jira admin. So I'm just going to give this example just to kind of show you, we can get it to work, but then we have to make sure we understand where everything is. Let me go back to my cloud instance. So what I have here is I have a Jira Service Management project, and I have a portal where I can request a concert. So again, if I want to request a concert, I can click on my Jira Service Management and I say I need to book a concert, and the band name is Def Leppard, best band ever. And I need to book DL for Stadium Tour 2023. And I say send. So I'm creating my service desk ticket. It's in a queue. Here's my service desk ticket. If I go to the specific service desk ticket within Jira, I can go there and I can see that I put my information in. I can also see down here automatically I have a linked issue. So what I did is I took that service desk request in, and then I automatically shot it over to my Def Leppard Jira project, which is not service. It's not a service management one. It's just a regular Jira software project. So automation wise, I brought it in, kind of self-triaged it in my service management, and then shot it over to my Def Leppard project. So, and I automatically linked it. So it relates to. So if I go to my Def Leppard project, I can see I brought it into my Def Leppard project, did an auto triage, and now I have a task and then 2 subtasks. So not only did I automate creating a new task in my Def Leppard project, I automated making 2 subtasks from my task for that within there. So if I go to my, if I look at my DL19 is my task that's related to my service management. If I go over here, there's DL19. I pull Def Leppard 19 up. I can see I have 2 subtasks. One is to call the venue, one is to secure the venue. So again, I automatically created my subtasks from my task coming in that was automatically created from my service management project. So and everything's linked. And you can see down here, there's my service management project that has been linked. So now I'm going to go ahead and I am going to say this is done. This is done. So our subtasks are done. We've called the venue. We've secured the venue. So now what I'm going to do is that in this particular case, I have it where I have an automation rule. So I used, and I'll show you the behind the scenes on this here with some of the other ones here in a second. So I have an automation rule where I'm going to run it every night at 11 to sweep through my Def Leppard project and then execute the following. So for a parent rule, if all my subtasks are done, I want to transition. Oops, sorry. I want to transition that parent issue to done too. So if my child tasks or subtasks are all closed out and resolved, I want to make sure that that task is also resolved and not just hanging there and staying open. So again, this will run at 11 o'clock at night. We're obviously not going to stay here and wait till 11 o'clock at night. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually run the rule. So I will run the rule automatically. And then a good thing that you can use with automation for Jira is you can look at your audit log. So your audit log is your friend. So whenever you want to manually run your rule or look, see if your rule worked, if something didn't work, you come here to your audit log and you can see here, I just ran it at 1:15. I can show more. I can say, oh, look at that, DL19 passed and it's done. So if I go back to my Agile board here, look at that. They're all done now. So now DL19 is done. So if I pull him up again, I can see that he's done, my subtask is done. Oh, and then look at that. My service desk ticket is also done. It's been resolved because I had an automation that said, hey, if my task that is related to the service desk ticket is done. Let's go back and resolve the service desk ticket too. So this isn't hanging open as well. So I've gone all the way back and closed out my service desk ticket. So if I go back here, you can see it's resolved and it is no longer going to be in my service requests. So that was kind of cool. So behind the scenes on that guy, I have a workflow for my service desk workflow. I have a post function that I utilize. I use JSU. So here's where I use JSU to create a create on transition kind of thing. So when I transitioned it, it came in on the create. I created the Def Leppard ticket and I sent it over to the Def Leppard product, and it was a task. Now, when I got to my task in my Def Leppard product, that's not necessarily project specific on this one. I said, okay, well, once I have it coming in, now I'm using JWME. So I use JSU, now I'm using JWME to create my subtasks and link those guys. And then I use my automation for Jira to close those out, my task out when those were closed out, kind of thing. So again, now let's do this again, but I am going to only use JWME for this one. So again, we're going to go back to my portal. I'm going to request a concert. Again, I'm going to book a concert, but this time the band is going to be The Crew, Motley Crue. Need to book MC for Stadium for 2023. All right, let's do that. So now I have Motley Crue, I have my R&R 16. If I go to R&R 16, I can see I've got that as my service desk request. Again, now I have a task that has been generated in my Motley Crue project, MC 16. So similarly, I automatically created that. If I go to my Motley Crue project, again, I can see there's my task, automatically created 2 subtasks. If I go to my MC 16, again, I see my subtasks and my associated service management ticket. So again, what I'm going to do is close these guys out. I'm going to close that guy out. So those guys are closed out. I'm not going to use automation for Jira this time, but what I am going to do is refresh my screen. Refresh my screen and look. So now my task is done and my service management ticket is done. So what I did is that I have a JWME. I basically did the same thing, except not using a cron job or anything to sweep through and do that. I said, well, on the workflow, when my subtasks are done, transition my task to done. And then that workflow, when that's done, transition my linked issue to my service management ticket to done. So again, I achieve the same thing, but with one application instead of using all 3. So we can see that again in my post functions for this. I can see I use JWME for transitions. And again, so again, the whole, sorry, there we go. So the whole concept, again, if I go back here to my Motley Crue, he's been resolved. So again, I choose the same thing, just a different way. Instead of using 3 automation applications, I used 1. So again, that's the overall planning your automations, you know. So I've seen instances where we've had you know, automation rules and automation for Jira, JWME, PowerScript, Scriptrunner. And it's like when something happens and you got to physically go through and find them, And if there's no documentation, it's such a hard thing to find and figure out and manage. All right, so those were two examples I wanted to show you. Let's get back here. All right, so just some thoughts why, obviously you can use the native automation for Jira. Why might I want to use a third-party app to extend automation? A couple reasons. So with your especially with your cloud instances for automation for Jira, you're going to have some you're going to have some limitations as far as processing. You can breach these kind of limitations. So for standard cloud, you have 500 executions a month. For global or multi-project, depending on the project, you could blast through that within an hour, kind of thing. And if you do, your automation will be throttled or disabled, versus a third-party app that uses workflow automations, unlimited rules. Native, you saw the no-code kind of workflow that can be used for automation for Jira. Third-party apps, a lot of them have some scripting that allows you to do a lot more complex automation rules. The automation rules runs outside of workflows, so you don't have any conditions or validations that you can use versus the ones for third party that may run inside the workflows, and you can enforce those validations and conditions in addition to the automations. And then again, for automation for Jira, it's going to run as on behalf of the automation app user. So you can put a person in that role as an actor, but again, it's more control if you can say, I want this to run as my current user, kind of thing. And some final automation thoughts. Again, I've been trying to kind of make sure that I convey the planning. It's always a good idea to plan your automations out. Do we need any sort of governance? Make sure your business needs are being addressed correctly. What's the impact of our automations going to be for our performance? Is it cloud? Do I have benchmarks that are going to be exceeded? Is it data center kind of thing? Do I have enough resources? Depending on how my data center is clustered, non-clustered. Make sure all your Jira admins are on the same page. Again, if you have one admin that loves automation with Jira, one that loves, a third-party application, and they're putting automation rules in across the board, it can be kind of tough to manage that. The one thing I forgot to show you within JWME is that you can have shared automations. So if you have one automation rule that you can apply to several different workflows, it's a good thing to be able to have that. And again, be careful on using multiple automation options or utilizing one. And again, I'd recommend documenting, whether it's a Confluence page or anything that here's our standards for automation. We're going to use these applications. And in this instance, for batch, we're going to use this automation. For transitions or whatever workflows, we're going to use this automation. Just make sure it's documented. For automation for Jira application, again, just make sure if you're using that, watch out for your limitations. And what I like to do if I'm using that is I kind of like to sketch out my rule as pseudocode. So I'll get a scratch piece of paper and just kind of what's my action, then I want to do this, and it helps me kind of visually see it. Then I can get into the actual application and knock it out. Human interaction is usually not an automated thing. I didn't get into a ton of when not to automate. I probably should have done a little more of that, but obviously, if you need approvals, if you need some human interaction, it's not an automation thing for the most part. And again, always test in a lower environment. I've made the mistake of trying to put something in prod, thinking it would work, and it's bitten me more than once. So again, always test in a lower environment. And with that, yes, more 80s hairband. So I know you guys didn't think you're going to get 80s hairband in a Jira presentation, but I told Steve earlier I was trying to set the standard for that. So that's what I got. I appreciate everyone being here. So Steve, do we have time? Do we have questions? We got anything? look
I
at?
think we do have a little bit of time, and we have a couple questions that came in, Ed.
Okay.
Our first question here comes from Todd. Todd Sears, if we're using rules to set assignees and we have many rules, how can we easily comb through these rules to find a specific name, especially in the case if a person leaves the company? We don't want to have to go through these rules one by one.
Oh yeah, I would. I would be using a third party like JWME to be able to do that, and you can kind of drill down on those roles within the scripting. In the cloud, it's Nunjux, and data center, it's Groovy. But you can definitely spin through the roles on that, and then Todd, can you get my email and send me an email on that, or Steve, so I can expand on that?
Yes, we can absolutely get that over to Todd, or Todd's got it right here. So
yeah, because I can go into and start doing it, but I want to make sure we have time for all the other questions. And again, you see my email here. Shoot me those questions.
Absolutely. We do have another multi-part question here. Came from Tasha earlier in the session. She said she had to drop, I believe, and maybe she came back. But the question is the Insight automation tool specifically for the asset management portion? And in theory, could you assign assets to a new employee and automate assigning hardware and software? And then there's a follow-up to that as well.
Yes and yes to that. So yes, it is specific to, so the Insight automation is specific to the Insight application, which is your asset management. And then you can use that to automatically assign assets to a specific resource.
Excellent. And then the follow-up on there was, how does this tie into Jira software project reporting and automation, or does that automation piece tie in at all?
So you think of Insight as kind of like an app that's bolted on to Jira. So you can get to that information a couple of ways. You can get it through the database, because it's just another tables in the Jira database. But you can also get to it through, Insight has reporting capabilities as well. And you can get to the Insight reporting on those assets per object schema. And again, I can get into more detail on that if they want to shoot me an email. But yes, so it's just kind of, remember, it used to be an app that you had to buy and install. Now it's just bundled into the product. But it's still it's tightly integrated now. So the reporting piece is you can easily get the information you need out.
Excellent. But then we had another question come in. I was looking for some clarity on this. I believe it was about running a conditioning query against object schema when using the Insight automation. So we did object type, I think, in the example. Can you run against an object schema? And I'm not sure if Sunita is still here and could expand on that question a little bit. I didn't get any extra clarification on that one, but that's at what point that was asked.
So here's the levels of Insight. So Insight, your object schema is at the highest level. And then within your object schema, you have your actual components, and each component has attributes. So your host, and here's all my host attributes. So you can query on anything from your attributes to your actual objects. And then at your object schema level, I'm trying to figure out what we would be trying to search for at that level. I'm going to give that, I'm not sure, but I can find out.
Okay. And if we see any additional clarification here, I think that'll help on that particular question.
Yeah, because Insight, you have your object schemas, and then you can go to each individual object schema and then drill down within those. So, okay.
And there's some clarification here, a conditional query to gain insight.
A conditional query within Insight? Am I? So your conditions
Maybe.
within, your conditions within Insight are going to be within this guy here. So you can add a condition. So again, it's IQL. So whatever, again, this is kind of like JQL, except for the Insight information and attributes. So in JQL, you would say project equal DL and status equal in progress and whatever. And here you can again query on anything in here with your IQL. So IQL is basically like name like ADF B. Oh, I didn't do that right. Remember my IQL? Which I don't remember. But I'm sorry, but either way, so the IQL is basically your conditions, and then you can actually query down into anything as far as that goes from a conditional perspective. So I'm not sure if that answered the question or if I need to clarify.
I think they said like filter and sort. Yep, I think we got that one in. We have a question from Jessica. Of
Okay.
any free or low cost Groovy learning paths, suggestions, or resources, perhaps. And she said we could take this one offline, but I just wanted to throw that one out there that might be useful with the mention of Groovy.
So Groovy, yeah. So Groovy's awesome. So basically, Groovy is an extension of Java. If you know Java, you know Groovy, but it just kind of extends Java. If you don't know Java, and I would go to the Groovy site. What is that? Groovy.org, Groovy, whatever. The cool thing about, do I have this? Let me make sure I got this installed. The cool thing about the JWME application is that it has an editor that lets you test, and you can see your Groovy and if it's syntactically correct and if it actually produces the result you want. It's just so powerful within the actual data center since the server's going away. I'm trying to see if I have it installed on my data center here real quick. Yes, I do. Groovy console. So I would get the free version of JWME for whatever 30 days or whatever, and I would bang this guy around. So Groovy again is very Java-esque, but you can define custom field, C field equals, and then it's kind of it'll walk you right through it. So what's my custom fields? What do I have? So that's, and then it'll say, okay, if, and do I get the value? So C field is that, and then I can do, if C field, then you can, it's really cool in that it'll drive you through what you want to do. But if I can say equals candy, then do something, do whatever. So couple things for the Groovy. I would, because then I can see that then I can actually test it against an actual issue that I have in here. I don't know what issues I have in here. And again, it's going to come back and say no, because I don't have any condition in here. But if I wanted to return, so I can say if equals candy, say return true, else return false. Test again. And so you can see, there we go, just a simple return kind of thing. So, but you can see where it can be really powerful as far as what you can do, as far as the scripting you can do in here. And again, it tries to make it easy if you don't know Groovy like the back of your hand. How do I get the field? So once I have the field, what can I do with the field? So do I need to get the issue key to look at that? And then based on the key, kind of thing. Linked issues. Do I have to, do I have to see if they have any linked issues and then loop through them? So it kind of helps you here. So if I was learning this, I would probably use this to kind of bang around with Groovy, and also reference the Groovy information on the site, on the actual Groovy site, Apache or Groovy, I think. That was a very long answer, and I'm sorry.
All right, and I think we have one more question about an app auto assigning tickets on a round robin type basis. They're currently on DC. I offered a solution that's on cloud. If you have any insights on how you might do that, taking into account agents that are on breaks, lunch, meetings, etc. If something like that is available for data center that you know of.
Oh, what did you say, Steve?
We have actually a Trundle made app, Sarge, for cloud that does that exact thing. It basically does rotations, assignee rotations, but it's for cloud.
So I know, and I'll have to find it for you. Let's make sure we take this, Steve, because I know, they have where, people go on vacation, if they can rotate in. I'm sure that there is ability to drill down too far as like, going on lunch, and then I'm 89% sure, yes, there is something. I just got to find it. I
was kind of searching around as well, and I couldn't find it off the top of my head. I didn't know for DC. I mean, you could certainly write a Groovy script for that.
Oh, totally can ability to that, but I'm sure there's something in there. Whether I don't know. I can see if I can find that.
Okay, excellent. That question came from Daniel Hopper, and you'll see that in the chat.
Oh,
if you want to
yeah.
reach back out directly to him.
Also, again, you can shoot me an email if you need to.
Excellent. Well, I think that's all the questions we had in chat here, Ed.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone for putting up with me and my 80s hairband and music. I appreciate it, and hopefully you guys kind of got some things to chew on and think about as far as when you're going about getting your automations. And again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to shoot me an email. And again, thank you, Steve, for helping me through this.
No problem. Thank you, Ed, for being here, and thank you to all the attendees for being here today. We appreciate the input and your time.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Take care, everyone.